are back.
Why I say, unfortunately, we're back.
Talking while we're on break. We always do that. Rock Talk. Steve McDonald, Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers. Our guest is Max Abramson. We're talking about veto override day legislation and the governor's reasons for vetoing the legislation and our reasons for wanting to unveto it. So, what's next?
Oh, one last point on HB House Bill 550, which is just, again, allowing New Hampshire businesses to do what every other business in the country could do. Have an initial public offering without a huge tax penalty. And what Hassan says is that the impact of this will impact future budgets without addressing how New Hampshire will pay for it. And she says that cutting taxes without offsetting the loss in revenue will jeopardize our state's ability to invest in the priorities that are critical to our state's families, business, and our future in the 21st century innovation economy. I love how she just strings all these new political buzz phrases and buzzwords together that one thing has nothing to do with the other. I wonder what's going on through her mind. Is it just
she thinks the innovation economy is exclusively powered by government. My response is, you want to balance the budget? How about cutting out some of your political hacks, bozo, and let the private economy grow instead?
She wanted to innovate by adding a new $1.5 million office for a chief operating officer to do essentially the governor's job while she flies around the world. So we suggested an efficient... Sorry, I'm just seeing that Hagi Masan sign. We suggested an efficiency improvement by just getting rid of that. That was so ridiculous. And the public's response to that was, why do you need to spend $1.5 million on a whole new government office to do the job of the governor just so the governor can go around the country doing fundraisers for her Senate campaign and whatnot? And she hasn't even announced that she's running, I guess, with the whole... Sorry.
I've creased him up, sorry. He mentioned Hagi Masan, so I showed him my picture of the progressive Nurse Ratched Hagi Masan.
There you go.
as seen on Granite Rock a few days ago.
Sorry, Max. Okay.
So House Bill 603, which is the one that I'm speaking on this Wednesday on the floor, very briefly.
603?
It simply recognizes a right that we already have, parents already have, which is to opt out of these federal assessments. Well, these federal assessments are being sold as skills tests. They are not skills tests of any sort.
Yeah, it isn't a skills test
It's
at
not
all.
a skills test. It is a test asking students their opinions, attitudes, and beliefs, and tracking those opinions, attitudes, and beliefs every year to make sure that they're pushing the whole big government indoctrination.
They're becoming proper little socialists.
The little history behind public schooling. The real reason we switched between World War I and World War II from private schooling to public schooling was not, as some people say, to help give orphans access to education. They were already going to public schools. They changed from private schooling to public schooling in order to produce reliable factory workers who wouldn't raise questions, wouldn't organize, wouldn't stand up for their rights, wouldn't stand up to the system, and they would just go along and get along with the whole system without questioning everything.
Well, except you say wouldn't organize, but the output of most of the education system these days is people conditioned to the acceptance of government unions.
Right, but government unions, by the 1940s and 50s, even to the 1960s, no one believed in the idea of government unions.
No.
They just started organizing in the late 60s and 70s, and it really was just, as far as I can see, it's just an accounting gimmick. I don't see very many real unions. I'm a union man myself. I don't see any real unions in the public sector. Certainly not the teachers' unions. They don't work for the teachers. They just come at you with this left-wing message that they push down on teachers, they push down on state employees.
The whole purpose of a union is for rent-seeking, to acquire more wealth for a few at the expense of the many, especially the few at the very top, the union bosses. And that's all it comes down to. We want more money than what the ordinary economic system, free market, would give us. And that's all it's about. Unfortunately now, especially with the government unions, they've become much more of a political force with all that money. So that we see basically the tyranny of the minority. Go ahead. Let's go back to California again, like we've been doing all day.
Private sector unions.
No politician can do much nowadays by having the unions oppose them.
In private sector unions organize against the company. Public sector unions organize against the taxpayers. And that is why the taxpayers are being hurt. Now, companies that haven't unionized, especially small businesses, are being hit with a double whammy of taxes because they get hit with some of the highest business taxes in the country from the state. Then these small business owners get hit again with the highest property taxes in the country. And you get hit twice again because they own a shop and they own their own home and they're paying the highest property taxes anywhere. So it's the public sector unions. About 80% of all state and local spending is, it's not construction and whatnot. It's not fixing the freeways. It's public employee pay and benefits. And most of that is going to the top. At the federal level, we have 15 layers, G1 through G15. 40% of the federal workforce is G10 or higher. So it's not even a pyramid. It's more like just the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It doesn't taper off at the top. It actually gets a little bit wider at the top. There are more people at the top. And so you have all these supervisors and deputy supervisors and managers and administrators and commissioners and so forth at the top. You have people sitting at a desk talking like we are now, but they're getting paid over $120,000 a year, and some of them over $200,000 a year, plus Cadillac plans and whatnot, medical plans and generous pension plans. And there are too many chiefs and not enough Indians. They're literally...
Wait. That's politically incorrect.
Really?
Screw political correctness. Proceed.
Yes, please do.
So here's what she says about vetoing House Bill 603. She said, if passed, House Bill 603 would discourage participation in the annual statewide assessment, violating the requirements of both federal and state law. Wrong. There's no federal law, and there's no state law that says that you have to take these. This is in response to an erroneous technical memo that came down from the State Department of Education, telling schools that you couldn't allow parents to opt out, and that should be discouraged and frowned upon and just not allowed. So now you have parents telling their kids, well, if they half the parents in Manchester and Nashua have opted out. New York State, they explicitly by law allow kids to opt out. They allow parents to opt their kids out of these, value-based assessments or whatever you want to call them, checking these kids' opinions, political opinions.
Surveys.
Of a 9-year-old. I know what my political opinions were when I was 9 years old. And it has absolutely nothing to do with schooling.
It was bedtime politics, what you could eat for lunch or dinner politics.
What should get blown up, pyrotechnics, things that have nothing to do with anything. And yet that's what they're polling. Spending an entire day out of 180 days, one teacher said 27 days a year are eaten up by all these different tests. So was that leave you 153 days left? And the tests are getting worse and worse and worse and more numerous, and there are more and more standardized tests. How many standardized tests do you need? Says that it poses a significant fiscal risk by threatening tens of millions of dollars a year in federal funding because you have to have 95% participation. But where you don't have 95, is the federal government really going to pull funding? They don't do it in New York. They're not doing it in Manchester. They're not pulling anyone's funding. It's just a ridiculous thing.
If I understand it correctly, they've never pulled anyone's funding for that.
New Hampshire's economic competitiveness, this is what she says, depends on our ongoing commitment to ensuring that our students and workers have the skills needed to compete in the future.
Apparently as pollsters.
As pollsters.
Yeah.
Receiving polls, taking polls, but you can take plenty of online polls asking about your opinion. I mean, we can poll 9-year-olds on Facebook. All the newspapers.
Actually, you're not supposed to be able to poll them. They have to be at least 13.
Oh.
That doesn't mean there aren't 9-year-olds saying they're 13.
Yeah, but newspapers, all the online newspapers have a poll on the front page because they find that it boosts readership. People like having their opinion, being asked what their opinion is on something.
Yes, they do.
I've received, and we've all received, more emails and more contacts on House Bill 603 than probably any other bill this year. I've had probably about 200, maybe 300 emails just on this one issue, and to see. We're hoping to pick up about 20, 30 Democrats needed to override Hassan's veto. But just to see, the Democrats aren't even responding. They're not responding to any messages. All the people I've talked to have said, well, we've gotten a few Republicans respond to our emails and our messages, and we're getting no response from the Democrats. So it's almost like they're locking their members down again and saying, you've got to vote against this and stick with the party line. And I don't know, why would you even run? Why do people even run as Democrats if you just have to do what Steve Shurtleff tells you to do? They don't have any independence or flexibility at all.
Well, it comes back to what Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the head of the DNC, Congress twit from Florida, has basically, when asked 3 times now, what's the difference between a Democrat and a socialist, and she cannot or will not answer the question. And you all know what socialism is. It is government controlling everything, and if they could own it, they'd do it.
I don't think this'll. My honest opinion about all these bills, the budget deal, everything, I don't think, even if you get an override in the House, I don't think it's going to get through the Senate. I just don't see it happening. We've already got weak-kneed Republicans in the Senate. The
Nancy
Democrats,
Stiles,
is an example. The Democrats, I just don't see the Democrats going, oh, okay, we're going to just ignore our decision about the narrative with regard to these education issues or whatever, and I just don't see it working. But bringing them up, having a discussion, making it public, letting people know, that's important.
People are paying attention to this one. There are going to be a lot of people watching the debate on these bills. But in response to what you said, Democratic Party's not about, nowadays isn't about social justice or social democracy. They're not cutting taxes on the working poor. Even they've gone further to the left even than the Green Party. The Green Party is a legitimate political party. Democratic Party is not a legitimate political party. What they're pushing is democratic socialism. They are pushing Soviet-style urban planning, Soviet-style controls, government control of schools, government control of healthcare. They want government control of everything because they are the government. They are the bureaucratic party. They're not pro-labor. They're not pro-worker. They don't care about blue-collar folks.
They're the government first party. That's what I call them.
They are the government party. They are the lawyer party.
Which is why government unions are so pernicious, because you set up these huge bureaucracies with unionized bureaucrats in them that then pump money right back around into keeping themselves in power.
Is there a vote on the budget? I mean, is there any way to override a veto on the budget, or are they just going to renegotiate the terms and put that before the legislators?
Well, we're still discussing whether or not we're going to support. Essentially, the Jasper budget gives the Democrats 95% of what they were demanding. Every time they gave them everything they wanted, revenue numbers would go up a little bit more, and the Democrats would walk away from the table and say, well, we want more. Then Jasper and those guys would give them everything that they wanted, and then revenue figures would go up again, and they'd walk away and say, we want even more. And they just keep going through this cycle, giving them more and more and more. And now Jasper is telling us, and Hassan seems to be indicating, that they're sitting down in secret, in these secret meetings that they're not publicizing or telling them about, that they've already come to an agreement that they're going to give the last 5%, that they're going to give the state employees who've already had 3 pay raises in the last 3 years, we couldn't afford, but now they're going to give them a 4th pay raise. After all. And then Medicaid expansion, which is the absolute last of those things, is going to be put off till next year. And they've been so dishonest and so sneaky about how they're doing it. And when you actually read the Medicaid expansion bill, they say, oh, yeah, when the feds cut it off, we'll cut it off, and that'll be the end of the program. No, that isn't true. If you read it, the way that it's worded, the message comes from the federal government to some state official, who then transmits a message to another official, who transmits a message to the governor, who then says that she's received a message saying that it's all been cut off, and then the program ends. Well, why doesn't the program end at the day that the feds cut off the funding for it?
I don't know. We're out of time.
We'll be left with a state sales tax if we don't.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what they want. That is absolutely what they want. Well, Max, thank you so much for coming down and talking to us about this. We're going to talk to Shona Holmes next, the Canadian healthcare refugee. You are, of course, always welcome to stick around and spend some time as we talk to the rest of our guests. Rich Gerard's coming in studio for the 10:30 segment. We're going to talk about his race in Manchester. That's it for this segment of Grok Talk. We'll be back in about 5 minutes with Shona Holmes. I'm Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers, and Max Abramson. We'll be right back.
rock.